Hey, saltwater anglers, and welcome to the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report, your local report, whether it's good, bad, or ugly. This podcast is part of the Great Days Outdoors Network, and each week we'll be talking to local experts to learn ways we can become better anglers in our pursuits offshore, nearshore, and inshore. To keep this amazing fishery healthy and thriving for generations to come, remember to protect what you pursue. Summer fishing is fired up with warm water and hungry fish moving into the bay. So let's hear who's making the show possible, and then we'll jump into the reports. Check it out. AFTCO has a gift for our listeners. They're now offering a camo sunglasses cleaner cloth with any purchase of AFTCO products. For cool mornings, I love my Reaper sweatshirt. And on those hot days, my Samurai sun shirt. You just can't beat the quality and performance. All you got to do to get your coupon code is text LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get subscribed to our email list, and we'll send you the promo code via email. Boaters know that the unexpected can happen anytime. That's why Seatow offers 24/7 on-water assistance with priority service for members. Whether it's a dead battery, running out of fuel, or needing a tow, Seatow's fleet is ready to help. Membership includes unlimited towing with no distance or dollar limits in your home area, fuel delivery, jump starts, and more. Plus, members receive exclusive discounts on fuel, electronics, dockage, and boat insurance. With over 500 ports nationwide, Seatow has you covered wherever you boat. Join today at seatow.com and boat with confidence. All right, you guys, welcome to this week's show. This is going to be a special segment where we get a chance to sit down with one of our newest sponsors of the show that we're very grateful for because they are the reason that we're able to bring great content free to you guys each and every week. They make the show, the production, all the behind the scenes work possible. So we're going to be talking with Captain Bart White from the local Seatow that covers the majority of the lower Chesapeake Bay. And we're going to dive into the topic of contingency planning for the unexpected. So buckle up. This is going to be a great conversation. Welcome to the show, Captain. How you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I appreciate you having me on this morning.
Absolutely, man. I'm looking forward to getting to know you a little bit, learn the story of, your branch of Seatow and the coverage area, and really just kind of get a chance to kind of dive into some of the knowledge and wisdom and experience you have for us boaters so that we can be better prepared for the unexpected. So maybe just to
Sure.
kick things off, tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey, discovering your passion for Seatow and a little bit about the Seatow area that you guys cover.
Okay. Yeah. So it started out as a family business about 21 years ago. Me, my brother Jeff, and my dad Alex. Um, we noticed that the business was up for sale over 20 years ago, and we've been on the water our whole lives and live on the water. So we we thought maybe it'd be a good business to look into and run as a family business. So we pursued it, and here we are 21 years later. So um, it's been a great 21 years of running a business with the family, and um, never had any issues. But yeah, it's been a good run.
That's awesome
So
to hear,
we're out
especially
of
for family business.
yeah, yeah. My dad, he's 83 years old and still has his captain's license. So he's got to be one of the oldest captains out there, I would think.
I would
But
think so
anyway, so
too.
our coverage area, yeah, so we have a coverage area. We're all franchise territories, and our territory covers basically from the where the fishing pier is at Buckroe Beach, and you kind of draw a straight line almost over to where the bridge tunnel comes on to the eastern shore, and
Hmm.
then we go all the way up to basically to the mouth of the Potomac River. So, in other words, you can almost say we have the whole state of Chesapeake Bay in the state of Virginia,
Got it.
other than
Okay.
the Hampton Roads area.
Got it. Okay. That makes sense. And you're based
Yeah.
out of Seaford. You've been on the water your whole life. Just a quick kind of high level question, for somebody who's never really thought about, Seatow or understands what Seatow, does, when it comes to planning your boating life as a captain, you're getting a boat or you have a boat, for those that don't have a Seatow membership, what's kind of the number one rule of thumb to be thinking about? Like if I don't have a Seatow membership, what's the number one reason that I should?
The number one reason you should, because so much happens out on the water that's unexpected.
Hmm.
Um, Everybody thinks buying a boat is easy peasy and it's just an easy, fun day out on the water. But being in the business for so long, we see otherwise. You just got to be prepared, and having a CTO membership is a peace of mind on the water, where once you go out, if you have any issues whatsoever, you're covered. We have high, pretty expensive hourly rates, and when you compare that to what the cost of a membership is, it's common sense to just be a member and not take a chance and have to pay us by the hour.
That does make sense. I mean, it's like, would you drive a car around without insurance and then you get in an accident and you're coming out of pocket? What are some of those
Right.
hourly rates in contrast to what the average membership price looks like?
Our hourly rates are $3.25 an hour in the daytime, $3.75 at night. So you compare that to a $249 a year membership, then it's a no-brainer.
Oh wow!
And we cover everything but salvage or hard groundings, basically. So if you run out of gas, you're soft grounded, or need a battery jump, or you break down, just need a tow, then you're fully covered for a whole year for $249.
That's definitely a no-brainer.
And the average cost of a tow, if you're not a member, is anywhere from about $700 to $900.
Yeah, considering what the cost of owning a boat, fuel, dockage, tackle, everything in between, or if you're pleasure boating, that 249 should be a blip on the radar and just an absolute must-have, must-do. And obviously, CTO, you guys exist as that sort of last line of defense. Some of the stuff that I want to get into from your experience, because you see the sort of worst case scenarios play out, for boaters. What's a situation that you see, often that could have been dealt with if there'd been a better contingency plan in place? Maybe a story about where, preparation would have helped somebody avoid a really tough situation.
Number one thing is nobody looks at the weather. You got to pay attention to the weather. It never fails. Somebody goes out, they break down, the weather gets bad, storm approaches. The weather is number one thing. And, what people don't realize is, even if you don't look at the weather, you don't pay attention, you go out and you get into trouble. Now you're putting your first responders at risk too, getting out there in the bad weather, bad seas. And, weather plays an important part. You've got to pay attention to the weather. If you see storms coming, go in, or just don't go out at all. And, we see people going out when it's blowing northeast 15 to 30. And we're like, what the heck are these guys doing? You go out and you get yourself in trouble. And then, like I said, you got to put the first responders in peril as well, because they're the ones that's got to come out there and get you. So,
that's a good reminder for sure, to check the weather, and then to think beyond yourself. I mean, we talk about that a lot on this podcast, about from a sustainability standpoint for the resource, the fishery. Everybody should take a little bit more personal responsibility. And what I'm hearing you say is, when it comes to your contingency planning, think about the weather, think about the time frame, think about the direction storms are coming from, and make some prudent choices, and think about others besides yourself. Think about those first responders, because you're in a dangerous situation, but for them to help you, now everyone's in a dangerous situation.
Yep. Yeah. And then the next one is gas. We all know that one of the biggest thing about boats is gas gauges don't hardly work. They might work in new boats, but gas gauges never work. So you wouldn't believe how many people we got to carry gas to. So, my suggestion, my recommendation is, every time you use the boat, go to the gas station, fill it up. Every time you go back on that boat and use it, you got a full tank of fuel. You go out, you run out of fuel. You can run out of fuel in the middle of a channel, a shipping channel. You could have storms approaching. You might lose your anchor, and then you drift aground, or you might not have an anchor. So that's another huge thing with us, is people that run out of gas is a big issue on the bay as well.
Yeah, those are two really good things to be thinking about, making sure you're checking the weather and that you're topping off. It sounds like a really good best practice, rather than, guessing, I think I've got 60 gallons and my average cobia trip, I've only burned 35. And, before you know it, or like guys that go offshore and, don't consider the weather, and now all of a sudden they're in 6 footers trolling all day, and then bam, they're broken down and don't make it back in. So those are two really good reminders.
Yeah, then when you're in the middle of a heat wave, who wants to be sitting out in the middle of the day with no wind blowing and you're out of gas waiting, an hour, 2 hours for somebody to bring you fuel?
Especially if
You
you're on a
know,
first date, that's just going to go bad. It's going to go bad for you.
that's right. Yeah.
Uh,
So you
and
got
it,
those. Another suggestion. One more suggestion I have too. We do a lot of battery jumps. I always suggest you can buy these, little small battery jump boxes now. Probably less than $100. Buy one of those and keep one of those on the boat as well,
mm,
in case your battery runs dead.
yeah, for you or potentially for somebody nearby you. We were chatting before we hit record about, the 4th of July weekend that's upon us. And you made an interesting point about, I was like, hey, is it going to be a really busy weekend? And you said, it could be or it could not be because with so many boaters out there, you got a lot of good Samaritans. So, I think,
Yeah.
having that jump pack, like you said, could help you or help somebody else that's in need. And
Yeah.
again, you guys are last line of defense, and sometimes timing is everything when it comes to safety. So you got a storm incoming and your battery's dead. The time it would take CTO to get to that person versus being able to jump themselves and get out of harm's way now. These are all tips that I'm hearing you say
Right.
that are both, good like convenience things, but could also really kind of come into play for your personal safety. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
you know, knowing kind of what you're up against as a boater, in your opinion, what are some things that we should think about beyond the weather, beyond the fuel, the jump packs? What are some other things that we should be thinking about, before we even leave the dock? Maybe some common blind spots or some false sense of security that we might have when we just hop in the boat and turn the key.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't go by float plans. Float plan is a good safety precaution. Let somebody know, let family members know, where you're going or where you're going to be at and what time you're expected home or when you're coming back to the dock. That way, if you go out and you're in a dead zone service with your phone or you don't have a VHF radio and you're caught dead out on the water, at least, when you don't get back when expected, the family members can call the Coast Guard or proper authorities and kind of let them know where you're planning on going to be at, and you're not backing home on time. So it's just your typical float plan.
And if a float
make sure you
plan,
got all your
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just make sure you got all your safety gear. You're required to have your life jackets, your throw cushion, your fire extinguisher, your flares. You got to make sure you have all that on the boat too, not only for safety, but to keep from getting a ticket written for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are all the Coast Guard required safety items to have on board. You mentioned the float plan, and it actually kind of made me think about it. Because I've done the float plans, especially when I'm going offshore, and communicate, hey, this is the general area that we're going to be fishing in. Our transit out and back is going to be on these rough lines, and here's our estimated time that we should be back, and here's the sort of time frame where if we're not back in cell service by this range, we probably are in trouble. For that loved one or friend who's got your float plan, what should be their first call? Should it be to CETO, the Coast Guard, the local Marine Police? Like, if things are starting to go
Yeah,
sideways.
no, it should be the Coast Guard.
Okay.
Yeah, if you got a family member that's not back in at a certain time and you're worried about them, then yeah, definitely the first asset to call will be the Coast Guard.
Got it. And, I've seen your boats around and, you guys have some of the hardiest built boats. What's the average CETO boat? What's the hull of the boat typically? Is it a certain make and model that you guys go after, or do you build them at a factory somewhere a certain way?
No, most of the CETO franchises build their own boats. There's a wide variety of all kinds of boats. I mean, we've got in our fleet, we have a World Cat, we have a couple of Makos, we have a rib boat. So, we have boats for almost every specific reason. We got one that can tow fast. We got one that can do battery jumps and gas drops easy. And, every network has, even lakes, every boat's going to be set up for their territory, and they're going to build their boats to their likings. We used to have manufacturers that built CETO boats for us, but I don't think there's any manufacturers out there that build them anymore.
Okay.
So if you want to get into business, then you're going to be building your own boats, or you're going to buy existing tow boats.
Right. And make them to your spec and needs. So, but you guys
Yeah,
obviously have, you're very intentional about your maintenance because those boats have to be turnkey, ready to rock, and reliable every single time. So,
absolutely,
so you know the ins and outs of
absolutely.
maintenance very, very well. What are some of the things like maintenance wise that the average recreational boater sort of misses that can sometimes end up in a call to sea tow that maybe could have been avoided if they would have been a little bit more religious about certain maintenance items?
Yeah, I mean, there's some issues with the engines that you have no, you just don't know what's going to happen to them. But in other words, well, you want to make sure you've got a good battery, of course.
Hmm.
Every 4 or 5 years, you want to replace your batteries. And again, keep a jump box on the boat at all times if you can.
Hmm.
Um, we see a lot of IOs that are breaking down. Um, there's so many things that can go wrong with an IO, overheating, water pumps, all that good stuff. So, it's all about preventative maintenance. You just keep up with your 100-hour service on all your boats, preventative maintenance, keep fuel in the boat. Full tanks of fuel usually keeps the condensation down as well. So it keeps water out of the engine. But yeah, I mean, just keep up with your preventative maintenance, and that's all you can do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. A great tip about keeping the fuel tanks full because it helps to keep the condensation down, which again helps to keep water out of your fuel
That's
water
right.
separators. You mentioned IO. For our listeners that maybe aren't familiar, what is an IO boat? What does that refer to?
Yeah, it's your inboard, outboard.
Okay.
There's so many things that can go wrong with an inboard, outboard, such as your lower unit, your engine. I mean, you basically got a car engine and a boat that's in salt water. Um, we usually seem to tend to inboard, outboard boats more than we do outboard boats.
Mm. Are there any items in particular, if I'm an inboard outboard boat owner, are there some additional things that I should have on board, maybe certain, wrenches or tools, things to think about? Because I've got that shaft now that goes through the bottom of the boat through those
Yeah,
seals, which is a potential heavy leak point. A friend of mine's boat sank right in his slip because he wasn't getting his shaft aligned correctly and it was wearing the seal out and
right.
eventually boom, and then his boat sinks. What are some things that those guys with inboard outboards need to have on board and additionally plan for their safety?
Yeah, I mean, most people keep, your typical tools on the boat. You got extra belts and fuel filters, um, spark plugs, anything that you think you could maybe change while you're out on the water, such as those items.
Hmm.
Obviously you can maybe keep extra water pump on there if you change it in an adequate amount of time. But, then again, if you got a CTO membership, you don't have to do it so much. You just call us and we're on our way.
Gotcha. We've talked through, gas, weather preparation, battery jump pack for guys with inboard outboards, a few more items, that they would need to have ready to roll. When I think about gearing up, whether it's for a fishing trip or maybe a fun day on the water, scooting from, coming out of salt ponds and heading over to the tiki on the eastern shore or the shanty, I'm going to be out there
Yeah.
for a full day. What are some other
Yeah.
items that I should maybe plan to have on board that go beyond the legal requirements, like items that would be helpful to have that I don't always think about bringing on board?
Plenty of sunshade, plenty of sunblock, plenty of water. You always want to have a good GPS on the boat as well. That's something we haven't talked about. You see a lot of people that go out and that people break down and they call us up, but they can't give us a position because they don't have a GPS. So you got to have good electronics on the boat for if you do break down. If you don't, I tell everybody the best thing to do is just download a CTO app. And as soon as you download the CTO app, it automatically gives you your position, so we can find you. But yeah, so you got to have good electronics. You got to have a good GPS.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. If I don't have GPS on board, what's the easiest way to provide a location? I've been in a sort of crisis situation before where I had a boat shut down, and when you're in a little bit of a panic and the anxiety is high, the stress is high, it can be tough to communicate clearly sometimes. So it sounds like the CTO app is definitely the way to go if I'm a member. That way I can just,
Yeah.
basically provide my location. But there's a chance we're kind of in, poor cell phone service or whatever. So is there a way I can communicate to CETO with VHF if I'm not in cell service range?
Yeah, we all the CETO networks, we monitor the radio most of the time, and we can be reached on channel 16 if you don't have cell service.
Mhm.
If you can't reach CETO on 16, then the next best thing to do is to hail the Coast Guard, and then you can relay your message to them as far as your coordinates and what's going on, and then they will contact us and then give us the information.
Got it. So if I'm hailing CETO on the radio, am I hailing a specific CETO, or is it just hailing CETO and communicating a
No, whoever
position?
it is will. No, just hail CETO, and whatever CETO network can hear you, they'll respond.
Got it. Okay. That's really great to know that there's those different ways. I could call the app, but at the very, least, it sounds like I should always be aware of my general location on a GPS. And when I'm communicating my position to you, am I saying, hey, I'm near buoy 34 in the Baltimore Channel, just off Eastern Shore, or am I preparing to give you latitude and longitude?
Yeah, latitude and longitude is what we want.
Got it.
That
Okay.
makes life simple.
Yeah, if somebody's on the phone telling you that they just
Uh,
saw a ship go by and there's a sea turtle to my left, that doesn't really do you
yeah,
much good.
yeah. And if you're somewhere where the current's moving to and you break down, you want to throw your anchor too, so
Mm,
you're not drifting further away from help. Or when we respond, we're going to respond to your coordinates, and we don't want you to be 2 or 3 miles away from your coordinates when we finally get to where you're at.
right. Yeah. No,
So
that makes a lot of sense.
if you're not in deep water, then where you can throw an anchor, then by all means throw an anchor.
Right. That makes sense. I've got a few more questions for you, but I am curious, kind of going back to the maintenance. You guys probably have the opportunity to put some incredible hours on outboards. And I'm just curious, what kind of outboards do you run? And what are the most hours that you've seen put on an outboard before it was, truly just beyond repair?
We run a little bit of everything. We run Yamahas, we run Hondas. We just took off a pair of Hondas that had almost 5,000 hours on them.
Wow.
So but it's all about preventative maintenance and your 100-hour service. You got to take care of them. That's what it's all about. If you take care of them and do your oil changes and your maintenance every year or every 100 hours, then you should get a lot of life out of these engines.
That makes a lot of sense. And
So, yeah,
one
but
of the
everything we run, we're twin outboards on everything. We don't run any single outboard boats.
Can you, in theory, put a
So,
boat on plane with just one motor, or is that pretty much not advisable, given different boats that you've got?
what do you mean? It's putting a boat
Like,
on a plane. What's the
let's
question?
say that I'm offshore fishing and I lose one of my motors. Can I safely try to put a boat on plane with one motor, or does that stress and strain potentially,
That
damage a motor?
it it depends on basically the boat, how heavy the boat is. Most of the time, you don't want to run a boat on plane with one engine. You'll tend to overheat them.
Hmm.
Most of the time, depending on the boat. I've seen some boats that's got a lot of power on them where they can get on a plane in one engine. You just got to play it by feel and just use your best judgment. I mean, if
Yeah.
you hammered down and you're almost hammered down on one engine, and you can just tell the boat's under stress, and you don't want to run that boat on a plane. You want to just
Right.
run it 6 to 8 knots because that's how fast we're going to tell you anyway. So as long as you're making 8 knots with one engine, then you should be good.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. From your perspective, 21 years out there on the water and towing folks out of all sorts of different scenarios. Uh, if you could kind of boil it down to maybe one or two things that you just wish more people knew before they needed to call you. And we've talked through several of them, but do any others come to mind that you just wish folks would kind of just keep logged in their brain when they're out there? Anything come to mind before they would need to call you?
Yeah, I mean, we have a little bit of a preventative checklist when somebody calls. I mean, we get calls where people cut their engines off when they're still in gear. So when they try to start the engine up, it won't start because they're their throttle's still in gear. So you always want to make sure you're in neutral. A lot of people will take their keys out, which then turns their safety lanyard is still in. They pull their safety lanyard out, and the boat won't start unless that's in. So we always make sure the boat's in neutral, make sure the kill switch is in. You know, those are the two biggest keys right there on why a boat won't start. Yeah, it's just something to think about while you're out there before you call us.
Feel like almost every boater, when they're brand new, within their first couple of trips out, experiences that little panic. Their boat won't start.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I can tell you from personal experience, you know, making that phone call and hearing, hey,
Yeah.
is it in neutral? Oh, I didn't realize that, you know, and it's an
Yeah.
easy thing to do
And
when you're first starting out.
yeah. And we go over that with them as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we have people, we've seen boats that overheat, and we'll tell them to the ramp. And when they pull their boat up on the ramp, we'll notice that they still have their earmuffs on their engines. So that's, you know, make
That's
sure
a
you
new
take
one.
your earmuffs off. Oh, yeah, I've seen that several times.
Oh goodness, that's
Uh,
bizarre. But I mean, I guess for folks that are trailering, that's easy to do because you've gone home after your last trip and flushed your motor and then just kind of forget that the muffs are there.
yeah. And then now, you know, you've got the new engines, the 4-strokes, of course, where you unscrew the nozzle there on the bottom side of the engine where you hook up your water hose to. A lot of people will do that, flush their engine out, and they'll forget to hook it back up.
Yep.
So, you know, so just a lot of things to check over before you go boating.
Absolutely.
And the number one thing is a full tank of fuel.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
that's the biggest thing.
So, Captain Bart, if I'm a consistent offshore fisherman where, you know, obviously the stakes are a little higher if I have an issue because I'm potentially 20, 30, 60 miles
Yeah.
offshore. Uh, when it comes to evaluating the different towing services that are available, you know, here in the lower Chesapeake Bay region, guys going out of Lynnhaven or out of Seaford, or Rudy, if I'm looking at the different towing services available, what are some important things that I should know in considering the choice that I make?
Well, there's really only two choices. You know, we've got one competitor on the water, and there's only really two choices. But you know, I tell everybody who's trying to decide on what towing service to go with is to look at the service the coverage area. You know, where are their boats located at compared to yours? How many boats do they have? You know, it seems like you would want to maybe be with somebody, a towing coverage or towing service that has a few more boats than the other competitor does, or closer to where you're at as well.
Got it.
I mean, because there's areas in up and down the United States where one competitor has more boats or has better coverage in certain areas than the other company does. So you just want to do your research.
Are there any limitations to the competitors' range as far as how far they'll go to get you versus how far you guys will go to get us?
Yeah, I don't know what I don't pay attention what what they've got going on, but I mean, I know we're unlimited miles.
Okay.
As long as we can get to you, if you're 60, 70 miles offshore, you're covered if you're a CTO member.
Got it.
If the conditions are too bad, then we'll do everything we can to get you help as far as the Coast Guard, or we'll make sure you get in, and we'll stay in touch with you.
Got it. So the unlimited, wherever you are, you guys will come get us. That's important to
Yeah,
know for sure,
absolutely.
especially for the offshore guys.
Yes, and if you are, I think we have I believe it's a $5,000 reimbursement policy where if you are in a territory where there's no sea-tow boats, or we have to refer you to another tow company, then you've got a $5,000 reimbursement policy where we reimburse you for having to use another tow company.
That's a really, really great benefit to know. Yeah, and it looks like it's important to look at the fine print, you know, on when considering, you know, the
Absolutely.
differences. So it looks like the competitor has a range of up to 25 miles from your home port. So if you are an offshore fisherman and you consistently go further than 25 miles from your home port, that kind of makes the decision for you in a sense.
Yeah.
If folks are listening and have not, like, maybe they've just like gotten lucky and they've never had an issue, so they don't think about, you know, that simple little
Yeah.
249 a year.
Yeah.
If folks want to learn, more information, find out more resources about CETO and your checklist that you mentioned, where's the best place that they can go to find out more information and go ahead and sign up for their membership?
Yeah. I mean, ceto.com is probably the best place to go to look at what we offer. You can find out where all of our boats are on the website, our locations. Yeah, and that gives you all the information on what your membership covers and what it doesn't cover.
Got
So
it.
ceto.com should be the best place to go.
Awesome. Well, Captain Bart, I've learned a lot, just getting to ask some questions and lean in on your experience on the water. I do have one kind of final question. This is more personal.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm a Mako owner myself. I've got a 1988
yeah.
261. What I've seen some other Ceto boats that are Makos. You mentioned you guys have a few Makos in your fleet. I'm just curious, what is it about the Mako hull that attractive for you guys to make into a
Yeah,
Ceto boat?
the old, well, with the older Makos, before the Bass Pro took them over, they were built tough, and they really ride nice. They're heavy boats.
Hmm.
But we have a 261 as well. We use
Hmm.
a 261 as our primary boat, and then a 25 we have also. But yeah, I mean, we just feel like that they handle the seas very well. They're heavy boats, and they've done us good.
Yeah, I completely agree with
Uh,
you. I've had mine for almost 10 years now, and I've taken it offshore, and they've got a big fuel
yep,
capacity, which is critical. And you're right, they
that's
are
right.
tough. I mean, I've unfortunately bumped into the bridge tunnel one time when I was fighting a cobia and tried to make a quick maneuver, but the current got me, and I swore up and down the thing was going to break my boat in half, and it just absorbed it. And I was like, wow, that's
Right.
pretty
Oh, yeah.
cool.
But no, the older Makos are definitely good boats.
Yeah, well, that's great to hear. Any
Yeah.
final thoughts or words of wisdom, advice for our listeners when it comes to their contingency planning for their boating?
Well, just remember, weather is key. Just you know, watch the weather every day. That's all I can say. That's the number one key is the weather.
I'm hearing you
The
loud
weather
and
could be
clear on
your
that one.
friend or it could be your enemy.
Yep,
Yep.
yep,
We
absolutely.
just we live on the water and we see boats going out in northeast 25 to 30 knot day, and we just think to ourselves, what are they thinking? So maybe they didn't look at the weather, but yeah, you got to look at the weather. Pay attention.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, Captain Bart, it's been a pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for spending some time with our listeners and sharing more information about CETO, the benefits, and contingency planning to make sure that that call doesn't need to happen, and the beauty and the
That's
value
right.
of that simple 249 a year, so that we have that line of defense just in case the float plan and the gas and the weather looking all somehow fails us. We know we can call and be taken care
Yep.
of. Thanks for being on the show,
Yep.
man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I enjoyed doing it with you.
All right, you guys, that wraps up a really insightful conversation with Captain Bart White, learning about all the ins and outs of CETO, contingency planning for your vessel before your next fishing trip or boating trip, and everything in between. I tell you what I learned from that was definitely check your weather, check your fuel, and most importantly, go ahead and sign up for that 249 a year CETO so that you've got that peace of mind that even if you do all your contingency planning perfectly, you're prepared for the unexpected by having that mobile app and that membership, and you'll be good to go getting CETO to get you back to safe harbor when you are in need. Guys, we're very grateful for our sponsors. They make this show possible for you each and every single week. So thank you to all of our sponsors, and especially to CETO for coming on board and sponsoring the Lower Chesapeake Bay Fishing Report so we can continue to bring great content to you guys each and every week. We'll look forward to chatting with you guys real soon. Have a great week and be safe out there. Upgrade your waterfront with Killer Doc's premium dock furniture, built to last a lifetime in marine conditions. Crafted from marine grade aluminum with a protective anti corrosion coating, it's tough enough to handle the elements while providing unmatched comfort. Featuring sunbrella cushions with fast drying, removable covers, our furniture stays securely in place even in storms. Choose from cabanas, club chairs, love seats, tables, and more to create your perfect dockside retreat. Durability meets elegance at Killer Dock. Check out the full collection at killerdock.com today. Looking to protect your dock with materials built to last? Shoreline Plastics has you covered. As leaders in composite marine dock pilings and building materials, they engineer solutions that stand the test of time. Their EcoPile is the ultimate composite piling designed for longevity and eco-friendliness, ensuring your dock remains strong for years. And if you need a quick fix for worn pilings, try Snap Jacket, a durable solution that restores and extends their life. Visit shorelineplastics.com to discover how you can elevate your next marine project. Shoreline Plastics, where durability meets innovation.
All right, Joe, today we're going to be talking about a really good topic that, you and I have been talking about a good bit, just trying to get your ducks in a row before you go offshore, or even inshore. Anytime that you're getting underway from a trailer or a dock, these are some things that you need to be thinking about. You got your ditch bag, safety kit, and all that stuff ready on your new vessel?
I've been working on it, man. Unfortunately for me, the very first trip out of the gate, I had to call Cito and
Wow.
and get towed in, and
At least you had Cito, though.
yeah, due to no fault of my own, it was actually a manufacturer defect on an engine part that I just had replaced. Unfortunately, did require a call to Cito, but that really, this wasn't so much a safety issue, but like if I found a weak point in my plan, which was, I've got an inboard. I started getting towed in. Thankfully, my transmission, will allow for towing, but I didn't have a pipe wrench in my boat to
Lock your
lock
shaft
that
down.
propeller shaft down, and I thought about it like as soon as Cito got there, I was like, "Dadgummit, I need to lock this propeller shaft down." And because the first time I'd ever done that was on your dad's boat. Actually, we lost
Yeah.
an engine offshore, and he immediately got down there and did that. And I remember asking him, Captain Mike, why'd you do that? And he was like, well, he kind of went through,
Mm-hmm.
could burn up those seals, burn up that transmission, and could even start taking on water.
Absolutely.
You don't think about stuff like that until you've been through it. Thankfully for me, I was close enough to shore. I chat GPT'd my transmission, and I was like, "Is this going to cause damage?" Was able to look up my transmission and found out that I was actually okay.
Yeah. Well, that's
But
good. That put it on your radar to think about, and that's
it
exactly
does,
what
and
we're going to be talking about today.
yeah. And next time I will definitely have one, and I'll lock it down just as a matter of extra safety. Is the way I'll look at that. But
Yep.
But yeah, man, I mean, you get out there, you don't want to learn that your safety kit is not adequate when you actually need it.
100%. You need to be thinking about all these things before you leave the dock, before you even plan a trip. You need to have your ducks in a row and
Yeah.
have
You
everything.
get out there and you don't have enough hooks, no big deal.
Right.
Like I mean, you can't fish maybe, but you don't want to get out there and find out that your safety kit is inadequate. So today we're going to be talking through all of that and trying to make sure that we've got everything in there that we might need. To do that, we're talking with Captain Walt Bond. Walt is a captain for Cito in central New Jersey. But Walt, before we jump into this, tell everybody a little bit about, your safety background and everything that's led you to doing what you're doing.
Well, thanks. I'm excited to be here and really promote safety. But so I started back in the mid 90s as a firefighter in a town called Phoenixville, Pennsylvania, and been a firefighter, rose to the ranks of captain. We had dive teams, and obviously safety is really important to us in the fire service. So I just continued on through my career through the fire service, always having that eye to safety. Once I left the fire department, worked at the Port of Philadelphia as a safety manager at the Port of Philadelphia, which is like one of the biggest ports in the East Coast, freshwater wise. So there's some great challenges there. And then finally back here with Cito. During that whole time, I had some type of involvement with Cito. So I've been a captain for about 20 years. So it's kind of it meshes everything together.
Yeah, well, I feel like I'm in good hands as far as, going through this conversation. A couple of years ago, I was out fishing, cobia fishing with my brother-in-law off of Destin, Florida, and we came upon two people in the water who had flipped a jet ski, and they had rented a jet ski. And they were very inexperienced in terms of boating, but also you clearly tell they didn't know how to swim. Their life jackets were up around their head, like they were struggling. I mean, they were in a panic mode, And when we came up on them, they were so panicked. They weren't hearing what we were saying.
You couldn't give them help because they were frantic.
They were frantic and irrational. And, seeing that and seeing how somebody actually is in that environment, that's one of the reasons I keep a heaving line on my boat as opposed to just a throwable flotation device. For me personally, I want to be able to hit them with a rope, like something that when they're flailing around, they can just feel that, grab it. We were able to get a rope to them, get them in the boat. It was a scary situation for them. Luckily, everything turned out okay. What are some of the most, impactful rescue situations you've been involved in?
Well, just recently, back in April, we had a guy. Like I said, I'm a fireman in town now as a volunteer in Waretown here. And I was listening to the police radio, and they said police department went out to go look for, at the request of the Coast Guard, look for a boat that was overdue. And it's a rock throw from my house. I know that there was a commercial clamming guy that they were looking for, a 72-year-old guy. So I started listening, and then I hear the truck is there, but the boat's not. Now we're 11 o'clock at night. He has no lights on his boat. So there's a problem. Immediately, myself got dressed, called one of my other captains up and said, listen, this is what we got going on. He lives across the lagoon from this guy as well. Right away, we just made the decision to go out, and we started doing a search with the Coast Guard, state police. Finally, a Coast Guard helicopter asset came into play. They located the boat. It's in real shallow water. We're talking right now, it's blowing 34 degrees outside and about 44, 45 degree water temperature. So it's kind of coinciding with what you're talking about with the, when you get cold. About an hour and a half, the helicopter finds the boat unoccupied. Well, at least they thought. We go into the shallows. We're running in about a foot and a half of water here. And got up to the boat and confirmed it. And that's when I just looked over at my captain. I go, this is not good. We already took a bad situation, and now it just got worse. So within 5 minutes, the helicopter lifts off from the hover over the boat, starts heading about 300-400 yards from us, and says, we have a person in the water. Right away, now we know this guy's in the water for 12 hours.
Oof.
Those temperatures, I'm like, this even got worse. All of a sudden, we start making our way where the helicopter's hovering with the spotlight on. We couldn't see. It was kind of blinding us, but we knew where they were. We started pulling up, and there's a guy standing there with his clam rake, his big white beard, and he has his laundry basket with the float on it with his clams attached to him, just standing there. Now, he's he's probably now in a foot of water or less. As we start to approach him, he starts walking away. He had no clue. He was so hyped. He was so hypothermic. We grabbed him on the boat. At that point, we knew we had a problem because our shallow water. My captain was trying to get him in. He was filled. The water was filled his waders, so he's now even heavier. So I had to leave the helm station where I was holding us. Now we're both pulling him in, get him in the boat. Now we're at ground. So we tried to attempt that. At that point, that's when we decided to raid back up the helicopter. I said, this guy's needs, immediate medical attention. Let's go ahead and go with the rescue basket and the swimmer to come down. And we brought him back. I met with him a couple weeks after that, not even. He was back clamming a couple of days later, but his body temperature was in the low 90s, if not high 80s. But he's here to, if it was anyone else, I'm telling you, this guy has been on the water for 50 years. If it was anyone else, there was no way someone would survive. If it was me, I would have just sat down and said, good night. He had boats driving by him all day, and they probably thought he was being friendly, waving, but he's frantically trying to get them to come over. So, that's just one of, and talking to him, he was just out there clamming. He said the wind changed, the current changed, and he had a short anchor line, and it popped off the bottom, and his boat started floating away. He was about 500 yards from the boat, but there was 12 foot of depth between him and the boat. He had no chance to go back to that boat.
Nothing he could do. Nope.
He was just stuck out there, standing there, and he fell a few times. That's how his waders filled with water. So it was a story that, unless I lived it, I would never believe it. And I can tell you, it was an incredible story of just that relief of feeling, seeing this guy standing there.
Yeah,
Was just an
that's
awesome,
terrifying.
awesome. It is. It really
Yep,
is.
that
And
is
later on,
terrifying.
he told us, he was said if we drove by one more time, he was just done. He was sitting down. It was over.
Yeah,
Wow.
So,
that is scary. It can happen
yep,
really, really, really fast on the water. Like you said, this
absolutely.
guy's been on the water
50
his
years
whole life.
experience.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how all emergencies happen. They happen really fast. Every time I've been
They're
involved in something
accidents.
like
That's
that,
why they're
yeah,
called
it's
Yep.
accidents. You
you're
never
not.
are planning for it happening.
Right.
Yep. But it's also interesting how if you've ever been involved in an emergency situation that you've trained for, you immediately know what to do. Like it kicks in. Your training kicks in. You remember where everything was that you put, put what you needed and like it's just, kind of like the other day I was saying where I had that we lost our oil. I mean, we had an oil cooler fail and the engine went to losing oil. Now, is that a life-threatening situation? No, but I just immediately knew, all right, shut this thing down as quickly as
Yep.
possible because you can't do any more damage if you just shut it down. So I think there's obviously going to be a different safety kit for a guy who's going out in New Jersey in the wintertime, and dealing with 45-degree water temps than there is a guy who's going out in a skiff in the summertime in Florida. But
Sure.
that being said, what are the non-negotiables that every boat needs to have on board?
Well, listen, everyone takes it for granted. The first thing is a life jacket. That is a non-negotiable, a life jacket for every person on board. There's many locations out there now that have these loaner life jackets. You go borrow one, you could take it back. There's no excuse not to have a life jacket for every person on board and the proper ones. You don't put an adult life jacket on a 50-pound kid. Like next thing you know, like you said, the life jackets are above their head and they're basically it's like peeing in the wind.
Yeah.
Yep. Going backwards.
Yeah,
Yep.
I've Butch and I interviewed a guy a couple years ago on here who had a life-threatening situation happen that could have been prevented with a number of different safety measures, but a life jacket would have been a simple one. One of the things I've noticed with my two young boys, I've got a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, is I put that life jacket on them every time we go, and they don't like it. It's a little hot, it's a little itchy, it's a little uncomfortable. But when they see dad put on his life jacket, and I just wear an inflatable, but it's still, it's still a life preserver. And when they see me putting it on, they're like, okay, he's wearing one, I'll wear one. And that's really motivated me to always be wearing one nowadays. Even
Yep.
if it's a fanny pack inflatable, you don't know when you're going overboard. That's the other thing is everybody thinks about it from this perspective of, oh, okay, we're going to know that the boat's going down. I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to get my life jacket out. It doesn't always happen like that. Sometimes you just catch
Nope.
a wave wrong, you step wrong, and all of a sudden you're in. If you're not in a situation where you had a life jacket with you, that could be the end. So a life jacket, of course, is very important. What else is there?
A mean of communication. This guy, he didn't. John was a experienced boater, but he didn't want to get his cell phone wet. So where it was his cell phone on the
On the
boat.
boat.
Mhm.
Look, it means of communications. We have the capabilities nowadays between CETO and the Coast Guard and the police departments and 911 systems, is we can find you by pinging your phone. It's that simple. You
Right.
know, having your phone with you, having a VHF radio with you, one of the two all the time. If you're getting off the boat like this guy John did, have that phone with you, have a VHF radio. At least at that point, you could start calling, hailing, asking for help. When you had that, imagine you're sitting there 400 or 500 yards away, looking at your boat floating there, and everything you need is on that boat, but you can't get to it. So if
Right.
you they make these waterproof bags now. There's so many options. It just takes the excuses away from not having that stuff with you.
Yep. I've gotten to where I just kind of clip my Garmin inReach on my belt. I
Yep.
just keep it on there because, like you say, man, you never know when you're going to go in. I mean,
Yep.
you're not going to plan on it.
Nope.
I got on to dad this past weekend, Butch, because he's got a Garmin InReach. You've got one. I've got one. I started doing what you're doing. Clip it to my belt loop,
You never notice it there.
fanny
It's
pack
tiny.
life preserver, Garmin InReach, and I don't have to think about where my phone is, where anything else is. I know if I go in, if I'm solo, whatever, I got a way to communicate and I got a way to
Float.
stay afloat.
Yep.
Dad was clipping his to like the T-top in a funny location. I said, yeah, Dad, this is great if you're on the boat, but what if you go over? All right. So he clipped the
Yeah.
belt,
It's
But yeah,
true.
you got to have that on your person at all times, right, Walt?
Yeah, and just to take that a step further. Yeah, hey, it's great. I got it. How do I use this thing?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't
You
want to
know,
be figuring it out right then.
that you don't. Yeah, exactly. Look, take those worst case scenarios and just, I hate using those what ifs, but sometimes they're great for training. Let's pretend we had this happen today. What are we going to do? When I take some of my friends out on the boat, if I go down, some of my friends, they're lucky they could spell boat, you know.
Hmm.
But so what happens? I go down and we don't have cell phone service. What do they do? So I just say, hey, look, the big thing you just need to know is you can push this button on the inReach, or you can take your VHF radio. Channel 16 is the radio channel that every Coast Guard station, police department listens to when you're on the water, and just know how to use a radio. So just the tools are there. You also got to know how to use them.
You got to be able to stay afloat. You got to be able to communicate. You got to take your people, your crew, through a basic training each trip. I mean, we did that on the charter boat every single
Yep.
morning. We went through, here's where the life preservers are. Here's everything you need to know as a crew member of this boat, a passenger on this boat, however you want to term it, and make sure people had a basic understanding of that. And I'm guilty of that. I'll
Yep.
put some people on the boat and I know where everything is, and I
Yep.
don't take the time to take my wife through and say, "Hey, babe, do you know how to get somebody on VHF? Do you know how to use this inReach right here? Do you know what to do in these situations?" So taking people through is a third component of a safety kit. It's not an item. It's having a
Yep.
plan.
Yep.
Yep.
It's important because you never
I
know.
mean, I have a 13-year-old that he's going to be launching his boat probably tomorrow for the first time. Never had a boat before. Trust me, he's been around boats, but now this is his personal boat. And, I make sure I set him up with the right equipment. Yeah, he knows that no matter what, he has his life jacket on. He's not required to because of his age, but he's going to have a life jacket on. He has an electronic flare. He has a VHF radio in the box, and I keep it all in this orange safety box, like an ammo can. I think they cost like $5, and it's watertight, but everything's in there, so it's all in one spot. So he knows if there's some type of problem, he just goes to the box, and everything's in there, first aid kit, all that stuff. So you teach them young, you start out young, and you just keep making sure that as you grow, they grow with it, and you just kind of expand their knowledge on that stuff.
Yeah, you got your communication device. You mentioned the first aid kit. You got some basic medical supplies.
Yep.
You've got the emergency response, whether that be your VHF or your SOS feature on something like an inReach. You've got your plan. You've got your life preserver. Those are the non-negotiables. Do we miss anything? Is there anything else you got to have?
Well, it depends on how you're fishing, what you're fishing. But one of the things I also recommend is I have a kit that's on. I probably have four of them on each boat, including my own personal one, where it's a 3,000 gallon per minute pump. It has probably 25 feet of cord on it with gator clips on it, and then it has about 25 feet of hose. So yeah, your bilge pump's great, but let's say you take on a problem. Let's say your bilge pump fails, or let's say you're taking a little more water than your bilge pump can handle. Now you have an additional resource that
Yeah.
you can just plug in. You just clip it on your battery clips, and you're good to go. You could, hopefully save yourself.
Yep.
But on the flip side, how many times you're offshore and people need help and they're taking on water? Here's another option that you can throw that bag to them, and they can just start dewatering, especially those
Right.
offshore runs, because help's not coming fast. You got to count on that buddy boat that's near you.
Yeah.
That's right.
I experienced that a couple of years ago, actually. I was taking my dad's boat out. And it'd been the first time it had been running a while. He had it out for service, I think, had it on a trailer in his yard. Down here, we get a lot of live oaks that shed their leaves in the spring. And that boat, when I got to it, the boat was just covered in live oak leaves. So I spent some time, cleaned it out as best I could. And we went out that day, went out fishing, and I was running. I was in the tower, and I started noticing the boat was porpoising. and like it was a trim issue. But I was up in the tower. I wasn't like kind of all that aware of what was going on. It's porpoising, and I'm fooling with the trim tabs and messing with it, and it still kept porpoising. So I brought the engine back down to idle, climbed down out of the tower, and as my feet hit the deck, I look back, and that wake is almost coming over the transom of the boat.
Oof.
And we were a couple of inches. The transom, top of the transom was a couple of inches from the top of the water line. And I go, oh, crap, we're taking on water somehow. Lift up the bilge hatch and look down. And I mean, we are to the bottom of the deck with water. And I'm going, all right, crap. Here's that emergency panic moment. It was lucky for me that we were in the Mississippi Sound and we were close to a marsh island. And I just instinctively ran the boat up onto that marsh island. But as I'm running that boat up onto that marsh island, it's listing hard to port, hard back to starboard. I mean, that water we were close to capsizing. Get it back up on shore, open up the hatches, take a 5-gallon bucket out and start bailing. And I get to where I can see the bilge pump, and guess what it's clogged up with? Live oak leaves. Just clogged up with leaves. Get that all fixed up, get all the water back out, find out we actually had a through hole break off at the brass. Like just broke. I don't know what happened. It wasn't rough. It just broke. It was its time. But, that scenario you just described is we put in perfect spot. I mean, if we wouldn't have been in a place where I could run it up on shore, we've got to get that water off that boat fast. You're going to need some kind of pump that can really move some water. Yeah. So that's a great point. And
5-gallon bucket's a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a backup plan is, that 5-gallon bucket or even a manual bilge pump can at least help you get things moving in the right direction.
Yep. What about a life raft, Walt? I know, like Joe said in the very beginning, it's going to be a little bit different for the New Jersey anglers, Chesapeake Bay anglers. But I mean, we get cold water down here too. I mean, it gets down to 50s, 60s. Did you have a rule of thumb there as far as a life raft, miles offshore, or water temp or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, life rafts, it's expensive. They're, because you have to have them certified now I think it's 3 years. So it does have an expense to it, but at what point do you put, a dollar value to safety and, life saving? So yeah, they are definitely a great option to have if you could afford it. It's you just have to know, once again, great. Oh, I have a life raft on board. Okay, well, how do you use it?
Right.
Have you used it before? Have you figured it out? Just saying I have one, now they come in bags. You just throw it down into the cabin and then, kind of like, okay, yeah, it's there. What's it going to do for you? Got to know how to use it. And look, anyone could be a YouTube cabin. It's just go on YouTube. You look up the manufacturer, you look up that particular brand, and I guarantee someone has a video somewhere on how to do it. So yeah, it's definitely something. But you need to have some supplies with that life raft. You have to still, if you're going to be, if you're offshore, you could be out there. The Coast Guard helicopter has, a 4-hour ETA. You may need some water. You may need a little bit of food. So you just got to think about those things.
Got to be visible.
I did a detailed analysis on life rafts over on our blog. And one of the things that was very surprising to me was going into purchasing, my first life raft, I had the exact same thought that you did, Walt. It's like, man, it's kind of expensive, like a couple grand for a life raft. And I got to recertify every 3 to 5 years, depending on the type of raft that's there. But when you stretch out the cost of purchasing one, the cost of recertification versus the total life, I think, they're going to last anywhere 10 to 12 years. And you do that, and then you take it by the number of months that you'll have that life raft. It works out to like $20 a month.
Yeah.
So there is that upfront expense, but like, man, if you can afford to go offshore,
right,
you can afford a life raft. And I'd much rather have a $2,000 life raft than a 2,000. There are plenty of boats running around with no life raft and a $2,000 rod and reel combo.
100%.
So, get a cheaper rod and reel combo, get your safety gear. It just makes you feel so much better and enjoy being out there so much more when you've got your ducks in a row and you've got a plan.
And that's exactly a plan. Thinking about what could happen and just constantly run them through your head, like you did with that, when you ditched the boat online because you were taking on water somehow. When we go out, look, there's a plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D, all the way up to plan G sometimes. And, we kind of just always have that. It's a moving plan, depending where you are, where you're going, what you're encountering. I may have this plan, but that's not going to work anymore. So now we got to come with this plan, especially in my line of business when we're towing a boat. That just makes things even more complex. So,
Yeah.
A lot of factors.
yeah.
Well, kind of
it's all-
along that, well, kind of along that same line of thinking, what are some of the most common things that are neglected or forgotten that you see and say, man, if you'd have had an X, you'd have been fine? Do you see that over and over?
Yeah, it's not even so much an item as knowledge. I'm going to give you a perfect example. We had a few years ago, we had a guy, he was out on his beautiful, beautiful boat, right? He left at 8 o'clock in the morning. He went out the inlet and he's cruising out there. And apparently he ran out of gas. So it's 8 o'clock, he left. We get a phone call for a fisherman that's off of Seaside, New Jersey, 9 miles, and says, hey, we got one of your members out here. He's out of gas. Okay. We get the lot long. We establish he's a member. We go out there, we get there. And I just right away, I looked at the guy and I'm like, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Well, I start talking to him, and here he was out there, 90 plus degrees, no water. His phone was dead. He had cigarettes though, but he had no way to communicate, he thought. So he just got lucky. This boat just happened to see him waving and they stopped by. Here, the whole time, he literally said he was out for a half hour when he ran out of gas. So that's 8:30.
He never got gas. He didn't even think about it.
He never got gas, but he also didn't think, well, I had no way to get home. I didn't have my cell phone with me, or I had my cell phone, it was dead. But did you know he had a working VHF radio on board? He didn't even know it was on there.
Yeah.
So gotta
So
be familiar with what you have first.
yeah. So that's that's probably the human error side of it, or the lack of knowledge. Knowledge is key when you're out in the water. You have to be resourceful. You have to think outside the box on a daily basis, like you did with that running that boat around. And that's not every captain thinks about that. Every captain thinks, oh, we got to get back to the dock. Well, getting back to the dock's not going to help you.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of
just sink
times.
at the dock.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times you got to
dry
handle it
land's
right
easy
there.
to understand. It's
Yeah.
like I know I can't sink if this thing's on the beach. We can
Yep.
deal with whatever's going on
Right.
Yep.
at that time. But yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, going through basic boater safety. I mean, Butch and
Well,
I
you
both
and I
have
were-
captain's licenses. We were discussing this
We
the
were just
other
talking
day.
about this. Yeah.
I was like, man, I really need to go back and review all my stuff because, yeah, you learn it, but if you don't use it, you forget it. It's just like
Yep.
CPR. If you've ever had to take CPR, you're like, how many compressions? How many breaths?
Yeah.
Like, and it changes every so often, the guidelines and everything.
And they make it easy now. You don't even have to, mouth to mouth. There's no such a thing anymore. It's
Right.
now they're practicing compressions only.
Yeah. Yeah,
So-
it's just it is just kind of reviewing, like you
Yep.
say, the basics, the fundamentals. Like the fundamentals will get you 90% of the way most times. You don't have to know everything.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, how many times do you see now on these videos out there of these boats are blowing up when they're fueling? It seems like it's becoming more and more, and you're like, how? That's when you go through your boater safety course. I don't know how many times they talk about turn your blowers on, close up the hatches so that the fuel doesn't get down into the cabin. It's just getting back to those basics.
Yeah.
You follow the basics, you have a lot better chance of being safe.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I mean, how many times, Joe, did you and I, on the charter operation that we were a part of for a long time, I mean, we'd be taking a nap on the way out or on the way in, and the captain would wake you up. This isn't real, but I want you to do exactly what you need to do. There's a fire in the bilge. There's 12 people on board. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
I mean, every week.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your dad would just be like,
Hey,
we
there's a
should
man
be out
overboard.
having a
What are you gonna do?
conversation. Man overboard.
Yeah.
Do it.
In the commercial
Amen.
world, that's so
Drilled it.
important.
Yep.
Yeah, and we had to do
Yeah.
the whole drill, go through the whole
Yep.
thing. And I appreciate that now. It was annoying as hell when he woke me up from that
It
nap.
was. Yeah. And look, it's just amazing. Just 2 weeks ago, we had the same situation that you did, Joe. We were out, actually was here at the marina, and I get a phone call from a friend. He says, look, there's a jet ski out front right here. that's overturning. There's people, they're freaking out. Their life jackets are up high. Same scenario. They couldn't return over their jet ski. I look at it. Their life jackets are up to their necks. We go flying out. We pluck them out of the water. We tow the jet ski back in, and they just look. They were smart enough. They stayed with the jet ski, but people were coming up to them, and they couldn't swim that 10 feet. So luckily we had our rib out there, and it just went right up to the jet ski, and we were able to, forklift them in. But
Yeah.
it's just that common sense. Like, get back to that boater safety. Just go back to that class. Read through your materials. It's simple.
Yeah. I mean, you'll be surprised at how training comes back to you when you need it. A couple of years ago, my now 7-year-old actually was bitten by a water moccasin, and really scary situation. And it was super eerie, but when I was a kid, my godfather, who was like my mentor, in hunting, he told me about what to do if you were ever bitten by a venomous snake. And one of the things I can remember him saying is like, you got to get to anti-venom. There's not a whole lot you can do. But the most important thing is don't get your heart rate up and circulate that venom throughout your system. And boy, let me tell you what, when my 4-year-old got bit by a water moccasin, my heart rate was through the roof, but I did not let him get excited or get stressed or get anxious. We just calmly and quickly got to help us. But it was eerie to me how that came back to me. And I probably hadn't thought about that since I was a teenager, maybe. And it just popped right back in. You will fall to the level of your training. So having all the gear doesn't do you any good, to your point. Well, it doesn't do you any good if you don't know how to use it, have a plan for how to use it, know where it is, and have somebody else on the boat know where it is and know how to use it. I think that's a big takeaway for today. So, I think for people wanting to recap, it's always good to have kind of like a checklist of things you can go through and make sure you either got it or you've got something in replacement. Like, you may not have an EPIRB on your boat, but if you've got a satellite communicator, you've got a way to communicate. Okay. That's independent of the boat. Like, say, if you're jumping on a life raft, you're going to need a way to communicate. If you're on a boat that's going down, you need a way to communicate. Maybe you get struck by lightning and you have no electronics, your VHF isn't working, but can you use your cell phone or can you use your satellite communicator? Like, having some redundancies. What's in your ultimate safety kit, Captain Bond? Let's recap everything for everybody.
Starts with life jackets, obviously. That if you don't have your life jackets on there, that's a no-go. If you do not have enough life jackets for every person on board your boat, don't even leave the dock. That's number one. But for your safety stuff, like, having a means of communications. One of the things we didn't talk about is a lot of these cell phones now, they're starting to develop where you could actually use satellite to communicate offshore. I believe iPhones are one of the ones that do that.
Starlink is now
incorporated. So hey, you have that feature on your phone. Do you know how to use it? Guess what? You're not going to be able to do it when you're offshore. You can't Google it because guess what? You don't have cell phone service. So you better know how to use it before you go out. So a means of communication's key, but you have to think about what can you do to save yourself. So we talk about first aid kits. Look, if you're going offshore, we had a tragic story that happened last year. A gentleman went out. He was going out tuna fishing. He had 2 other guys with him, and they started running offshore. When he left the dock, he wasn't feeling well. Okay, big red flag right there. You're not feeling well. Something's going on. You have a heart history. Maybe you start thinking about this. They're about 48 miles offshore when he collapsed behind the wheel. So now the crew on board, 2 guys, new CPR. For 2 hours, they did CPR until they rendezvoused with the Coast Guard. But something like that, look, have someone know how to do CPR on your boat. It's not that hard to do. My 13-year-old can do it. Just if you're running a commercial boat and you're going to be doing a lot of offshore runs, hey, look, talk about a life raft. We talk about some other equipment. So here's some outside the box thinking. What about an AED? $1,000 now. You could get one, put it on the boat. You teach everyone how to use it. You don't even know how. You could just walk up to it. You could never seen one before. You turn it on. Guess what? It tells you what to do. So it's just another outside the box tool to have. Pumps. I'm telling you, having those pumps can it could save your life. Just putting one of those pumps on. Communications, radio, know how to use a VHF radio. Make sure it's working properly. Look, if you're going 50 miles offshore, I hate to tell you, having your handheld VHF is really like, might as well just throw it in the water. 50 miles offshore, trying to use a VHF handheld ain't going to cut it. It's like a hunting dog ain't going to hunt. So you got to don't even think about that. You have to have the proper communication equipment. First aid kits. Look, how many times have you just needed a Band-Aid? Would you want to ruin your trip because you just don't have a Band-Aid or just some basic first aid stuff, which you can get through?
Yeah. Some steri strips, like, I mean,
butterfly bandages.
Be the difference from having to, it may not be a life-threatening thing even, but it's just like, okay, we're
Trip
50 miles offshore.
For sure.
We've got a laceration here that's pretty bad. It might need a stitch. If we can throw some steri strips on it, we get through the day, we get back in, at a normal pace. Otherwise, we're shutting her down.
Right.
So, I mean, those are just some simple things. I'll never forget the time I was out back in the late 80s. I was out on a headboat. And I had my fire department jacket on. It was cold. We were in Bluefish. We were crushing. We had some good gators coming in. And next thing you know it, the mate comes up and whispers in my ear. I turn around. Like, yeah. He goes, "Are you a fireman?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Can you come here for a minute?" I go into the cabin, and there's a kid that was trying to get the hook out of a bluefish's mouth. And the bluefish took basically right through his 3 knuckles. Ripped off all the skin. Everything's exposed. And I said, "All right, look, I need your first aid kit." And I, God's honest truth, it was no bigger than 2 packs of cigarettes. That's how big this first aid kit was. And I just laughed at myself. I'm like, all right. There was a good show back in the day called MacGyver. I was like, all right, we're going to be doing some MacGyvering. I just happened to look. There was a bottle of whiskey on the table. And in the trash can, there was popsicle sticks. I'm like, all right, well, at least I got something to work with. The whiskey on the fingers. I was thinking about doing a shot myself before I start doing all this. Right. A whiskey on the sticks, and then we just wrapped his fingers. I went up to the captain. I go, "Hey, this is day ender. This guy's got it. This is not a matter of like stitches. This is surgery at this point." So we ended up wrapping up the day. But this is a boat that carries 100 people, and if this first aid kit was packed the size of 2 packs of cigarettes.
Weren't ready.
Which is all changed now. The Coast Guard inspections definitely changed that. So but those are really the basics. Just and great. I have all this equipment. I have the top line VHF. I have the top line radar. I have the InReach. I have a PLB. I have an EPIRB. Do they work? Do you maintain them? Do you inspect them? Do you know how to use them?
Yeah, you got them charged up. You got a way to charge them. All those kind of things.
Change the batteries.
With that first aid kit too, if you got anybody on there who's got any kind of pre-existing conditions, just make sure they got their stuff. I mean, my dad's a diabetic. I know, Butch, you probably remember we had that guy on the boat when we were teenagers that almost went into a diabetic coma. I mean, they were having to crush up Oreos and almost force feed it to him just to try to get his blood sugar up, like things like that. My dad's always got a way to get his blood sugar up quickly if that happens on the boat. Just having the basic meds that people need.
Absolutely.
That you forgot something majorly important though, Walt.
What's that?
You got to have some kind of a assistance where if you're going out there, you missed a golden sales opportunity here. But I'm glad you didn't come here just to promote Zito. But I mean, man, a lot of people try to go at it on their own, or they're like, "Oh, I got plenty of buddies on the water, and I'll just get somebody to tow me in." I can get in touch with people like
until you
not
don't.
Me, man, for
for
$250 a year, I sure would like to know that I'm taken care of no matter what I need. And honestly, like if I run out of gas, I don't want to have to call any of my buddies. I want to call you guys and be like,
no
y'all
pictures.
keep your mouth and y'all keep y'all's mouth shut about this.
Listen, I had a good friend that ran out of gas one time, and he was quite a bit right away. And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You went out and you don't have a CTO membership?" This is back before when I was down here, but like, come on, it's a no-brainer. $250 covers you, for any need. And the thing is, there's so many stories that you can get, not only just from, the towing side of it, but the calls that you can use as a resource. Like if you're going into a new area you've never been before, you can call that area. I get calls coming into Barnegat Lake. So the joke about Barnegat Bay here in New Jersey is it's the only place in New Jersey on a boat you could break down and walk home. That's how shallow it is. Okay.
Wow.
But we give that, you can just call. You call the 800 number, they'll connect you to the local captains, and we'll give you that information. Hey, this is how you get in safely. What we don't want to necessarily go out and tell you. We want you to enjoy your day, have a safe ride out there, enjoy the day. Let's not make it a day ender. Let's come up with some conclusions. You know how many times I've talked to, hey, did you check your kill switch when your boat's not starting? Is it in neutral? Sometimes you just need that voice of reasoning or someone that just sees it every day to have that phone call. And for $250 is a peace of mind, compared to having to pay thousands, for a tow.
Yeah, I mean, you have to get towed one time, one big tow, and you could pay for a decade of CTOW memberships or more, not to mention all the other services you guys offer. I mean, like when you're trailering a boat, just you have a breakdown with a trailered boat, like that's not something you're going to pull out your little jack out of your truck and fix. Like you need somebody that's got a floor jack, come out there and help you. And, honestly, like Florida in summer, it's 96 degrees. You're standing on the pavement, like, I think I'm going to get some help here.
You're already frantic and panicked.
Yep.
Oh man, there's so many more benefits to it for sure. But just having a buddy, that's your ultimate buddy boat right there, in my opinion, is you got CTOW to back you up. But like you said, it's really important that you be able to take care of yourself. If you're broken down, you might have a situation where you got to do something before somebody can come get you. And so many people overlook that. They're like, hey, I need to be able to self-rescue and then have a backup plan to get me in. You guys do a great job of that, of course, and you've done a great job today kind of taking us through everything that people need to think about. For new boaters, just getting started, what's the last piece of safety advice you want to leave people with?
Look, education, experience, to start going out. Anyone, like the old Jimmy Buffett song, anyone could put the boat between two markers, but let's get to the dock. Just practicing docking, practicing the basics. Go to the fuel dock, practice fueling. What do you do? Run through it. You may have to, for the first few weeks, have a checklist with you. Hey, this is the things we need to do. But and the other thing is slow is pro. Everything you do is slow. If you don't want to hit anything faster than you want to hit something, you know what I mean? You just take it slow and just practice. There's nothing wrong with getting out on that boat. If you have a windy day, and that's a great time to practice if you have the ability to do so.
Yeah. Well, Catwall, it's been enlightening, man. I think this is a good reminders for everybody, no matter what point of the season you're in. It's certainly something you should think through at the beginning of every season. But really, I mean, I hope everybody has listened hard and this maybe spurred something for them. They go, ooh, there's a chink in my armor right there. I need to make sure I get that. We really appreciate you joining us and just bringing this to top of mind for everybody.
No, thank you for having us. And we're always available to answer the phone. And if you have any questions, you could always call CTOW franchise. They'll help you out.
The days of heading out and blindly looking for good fishing areas are pretty much over. Don't waste time and money on fuel searching for fish. What you need are the most recent, highest resolution images to not only know where to go, but where not to go. The knowledge provided by today's technology is critical when planning an offshore fishing trip. So make the choice that captains all up and down the East Coast make and choose Hilton's Real-Time Navigator. The easy-to-use interface and excellent customer service will have you on the fish every time you go. Check them out at hiltonsoffshore.com. Hooked on fishing? Then you're part of the local community that Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle cares about serving and giving back to, providing you with the right selection for each season's target species. They're your one-stop shop to gear up with the best bait, tackle, and insider tips to catch your next trophy fish. You can fuel up right out front on the water and then chat with the crew inside for hot tips on where they're biting. So swing by today. Long Bay Point Bait and Tackle, where your fishing adventures start and finish with your trophy catch on their scales. All right, y'all, that's going to wrap it up this week. Please subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to podcasts. And remember, to get your free AFCO Camo Sunglasses Cleaner Cloth, text the acronym LCBFR to 779-345-2918 to get your promo code and be added to our email list so we can send you the new show each week. You guys keep on whacking them and be safe out there.